Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode 126 of the Hammer Territory podcast. I am your host, Brad Rowland, coming to you on a Sunday evening here in mid-December, and I'm joined, as I often am, by Scott Coleman. Scott, it's not quite an emergency podcast, but it kind of is. The Braves signed someone, so we had to talk about it. Here we are.
Hello, Brad. Live from your Las Vegas hotel room.
That's true.
We are going to break down the move that not just shook the baseball world, but maybe the entire planet. Bryan De La Cruz, feel the mania. Shohei Ohtani, watch your back. You have a new big man on campus with Bryan De La Cruz, a minor league deal. But I think it's kind of a fitting state of the offseason for the Atlanta Braves when Bryan De La Cruz is someone who gets everyone kind of worked up and talking about him. And hell, we're gonna talk about him tonight. So here we are.
Yeah, we were going to do a podcast of some kind in our normal slot. This is our normal slot. If you're just finding the podcast for the first time, welcome aboard. We often have a show on Sunday evening into Monday. We are also part of Foul Territory, which is a fantastic network of baseball shows. The flagship is awesome. Also have team shows across the board. We are Hammer Territory. We cover the Braves. Please subscribe to the podcast anywhere you find your podcasts on the audio side. Plus, we are on YouTube if you want to see Scott and the aforementioned hotel room that I am currently in as I cover basketball for my semi-day job. Also, we had 4 shows last week. And all of them are relevant still. So listen to those shows if you missed them. We were busy last week during the winter meetings. Even if the Braves were not, we had lots to talk about. But yeah, I mean, tongue-in-cheek about emergency podcasts and such, but it is a move that I wholly agree with you. We would have covered at some point if they signed Bryan De La Cruz at some point in the winter, but it became a whole discussion topic today on this Sunday on Braves Twitter, people getting mad on all sides, and maybe it's just the epitome of a dead zone move that gets a lot of different attention here. And as you said, it's a split contract, which means it's non-guaranteed. Could be in the majors, could be in the minors, could be off the team in a couple of months. None of that would surprise me a lot. He's got minor league options. And just one more time, his name is Bryan De La Cruz. He's about to be 28. Actually, he turns 28, I believe, Monday. So happy birthday. It's Bryan De La Cruz. He just, that's a nice little present for him to get some contractual stability necessarily. But okay, Scott, let's just start here. Big picture, who is Bryan De La Cruz, and what was your reaction to this, knowing that people were ready to react on all sides?
Yeah. So, I think it's just worth quickly saying that if the Braves made this move a week before spring training, and they had already added a legitimate outfielder and a legitimate starting pitcher and maybe a reliever or two, it would be like, okay, cool. He's going to come into spring training and be a potential 4th outfielder type. Maybe he's in a platoon with Jared Kelenic until Ronald Acuña Jr. comes back. And of course, because there's been basically no additions for the Braves so far this winter, a very quiet winter meetings just passed by. We're all jonesing for any kind of move. So when the Braves pretty harmlessly announced a minor league non-guaranteed deal for De La Cruz on a Sunday morning of all times. we were sounding the alarms. We got the I think they were joke tweets saying emergency pod.
You think so, but some people are always serious when they do that. I don't know who is and who isn't, but it's and look, we appreciate people wanting the podcast and thinking of us.
Yeah,
it wasn't even a blue square. Like, that's the famous Braves thing. Like, oh, blue square, here we go. It was just a tweet. The Braves just announced it in a tweet. Nothing fancy at all, which kind of tells you the severity or the importance of the signing.
Yeah. And, frankly, I was thinking about this a little earlier. If Bryan De La Cruz was not on a division rival the last couple of years, I'm going to guess like 90% of Braves fans really wouldn't know who De La Cruz is. Yeah. Just based on his numbers. Let's kind of hit on who this player is. Bryan De La Cruz, he debuted with the Marlins in 2021. So he's been around now for 4 seasons and was really a pretty good hitter his first 2 years in Miami. And 2022 especially, he had a crazy StatCast profile, and it looked like the Marlins had really kind of found someone, which was notable considering Miami has really struggled to develop hitters over the last, decade basically. But, since then, over the last 2 seasons, De La Cruz has been quite bad. Maybe this is kind of our segue into who he is as a player and why the Braves might have been interested in him for a certain kind of role. But I think we wanted to say right off the jump here that by no means is this a permanent solution to the corner outfield spot. This is not meaning the Braves are done in the outfield by any means. He is truly a depth piece. And I mean, frankly, if you go to a lot of Gwinnett games, you're probably going to see Bryan De La Cruz at some point.
Yeah, he has options, and that's, I'm sure, part of this as well. He's kind of there are different levels of Alex Anthopoulos reclamation projects. He's a low end one, to be sure. It's not like he's someone they're going to pay a lot of money to, for instance, but he is someone who has, as you referenced already, a relatively intriguing profile when it's gone well in the past. He's got some real pop in the bat, which I'm sure is part of what Alex is seeing. He has underperformed his Statcast metrics, which generally something that the Braves look for. And my whole takeaway, honestly, was that the Braves just see something that they're intrigued by with Bryan De La Cruz. He's available for cheap, and they're just like are intrigued, and we'll see. But you laid it out a little bit, but he's been quite bad for about the last year and a half or so, like a below replacement level player. So if that's what the Braves get, they'll know it pretty quickly, and that'll be the end of the Bryan De La Cruz era. If they get him into spring training and they can see something, it's got to maybe unlock something, then it becomes interesting. You mentioned he played with Miami. He was in Pittsburgh after that. He really, 2022, truly, it was like, if you look at the Statcast like batted ball data, it is very impressive. It looks like Marcell Ozuna's profile, like just rocketing the baseball. But and the results were okay. They weren't that. But since then, it's not been quite as impressive. I mean, he's been not just and part of this is defense, which we'll come back to. Not just a below replacement level player, but also a below average hitter, like strong below average hitter for the last year and a half or so. And if he doesn't hit, like there's nothing there because the defense is not plus. He can run a little bit, but nothing particularly intriguing. And as I want to get to at some point in this conversation, he isn't a big platoon split guy. So like there's the thought that, and maybe they still do this because Ronald Acuña, who we'll come back to later on, is going to probably be out for a while. They're going to need some depth. And one of the ideas that many have had is like, all right, if you want to go cheaper, low cost, or bargain bin hunting, maybe you find a right-handed lefty masher to pair with Jared Kelenic for a while, et cetera, et cetera. That's not really what the profile says for Bryan De La Cruz. In fact, most recently he was better against righties than lefties. I don't think he's a reverse platoon guy, but he's about even for his career. And I don't know, man. Like he's a major league player, I think. We'll see. At least he has been in the past. But it's what you said was perfect earlier, but it really is the fact that the Braves just, I'm confident, see something they like. And that's probably as far as we have to go with this. And they also have this situation in the outfield where even if they sign someone or trade for someone who's a permanent starter, they got this month and a half, maybe 2 months, maybe of Ronald Acuña in uncertainty where they're going to have to play somebody in the other corner along with Kelenic. And there's a spot, there's an avenue for potential like fifth outfielder, fourth outfielder kind of thing for De La Cruz.
Yeah, two numbers here for Bryan De La Cruz that are interesting or of note. So since the 2023 All-Star break, so the last year and a half, De La Cruz has a 76 WRC plus over about 900 plate appearances. If those
that's
aren't
Arcia
familiar,
territory there. That's a Len Arcia territory, folks. That's about the same as what Arcia is. And Arcia is a good defender, and De La Cruz is not. So there's that.
So 100 is league average. So 76, do the math, quite bad. And, you mentioned the platoon thing. That was my first guess. Whenever the Braves go out and target an outfielder, they've tried to play the platoon game a little bit with Kelenic and Adam Duvall and Rosario and Soler. Like the outfielders they've added, they really have not found like that permanent solution now for a couple of years, at least in the corner, along with Acuña and Harris. But for his career, De La Cruz only a 92 WRC plus against lefties, and it's 89 against right-handed pitching. So basically the same hitter, left and right. So that caught me by a little bit of a surprise when I was trying to understand this move. And I think you said it a minute ago, Brad. Once upon a time, De La Cruz hit the ball really hard and did some things that I'm sure the Braves are at least intrigued by. But it's pretty clear that, they're picking up on a player who was traded to the Pirates in the middle of the year and posted a negative 1.1 WAR in 2 months. That's like impossible to do. I have a good buddy who's a Pirates fan, and he said, quote, "He's the worst baseball player I have ever seen," end quote. Now, of course, that was in jest, but to get that reaction out of a fan who just watched him play for 2 months is probably a little telling. But hopefully Bryan De La Cruz is never really counted on for a big role, and the Braves get Acuña healthy and Michael Harris stays healthy, and then they're able to add a good left fielder to the mix. And obviously the signing today does not exclude that or preclude it by any means.
Yeah, it's a good place to kind of leave that for a second. We'll come back to De La Cruz and also just big picture where the outfield is going to be. First, though, we're from our partners on the podcast today.
This holiday season, I want to give a gift to my loved ones that makes them feel special and unique. That gift is Storyworth.
Here's how it works. Each week, Storyworth emails your loved one a thought-provoking question that you get to help pick. Things like, what's the bravest thing you've ever done? And what's the farthest you've ever traveled? All your loved one needs to do is respond with a story. Long or short, it doesn't matter. After that year of fun, Storyworth compiles those stories and photos into a beautiful keepsake hardcover book that you'll be able to share and revisit for generations to come. This is the perfect book to pass along at family gatherings or read with your kids. It is beautifully orchestrated by Storyworth, and that's why it has more than 35,000 five-star reviews on Trustpilot, with millions of stories preserved since they were founded over 10 years ago.
With Storyworth, I'm giving those I love most a thoughtful personal gift from the heart and preserving their memories and stories for years to come. Go to storyworth.com/foul and save $10 on your first purchase. That's storyworth.com/foul to save $10 on your first purchase.
Okay, Scott. We are in full agreement that they still have to add an outfielder. You led with that. I will echo it now. De La Cruz, while potentially intriguing, and if you squint hard enough, I can see the potential intrigue.
Sure.
I'm sure the Braves are not counting on him. They're not building their whole strategy of the offseason around De La Cruz. They're just trying to buy low on a guy that they see something in, and that's as simple as that. And the option thing is important too. Like, so if nothing else, stick him in the minors. If he just destroys the baseball there, maybe comes back, whatever. But this does not check any boxes. I teased it a minute ago, but Ronald Acuña is not going to be ready for opening day. That's been said already very plainly by the Braves. What we don't know is how long he's going to be out. And what we don't know beyond that is how long he can play the outfield. Because dating back to the early portion of the offseason when we did a lot of Jorge Soler talk and the fallout about that, and even before that was happening, we were like, hey guys, they have two DHs, Ozuna and Soler, and they might have a third and Ronald Acuña. Not that Ronald won't be able to play out the outfield all season long, but they might have a situation where they take it easy on him for a little while. They're going to need some more depth. Even if they bring in your favorite outfielder, Jurickson Profar, whoever that guy is, they probably still have to fill at least a month. Scott, I mean, between they have Kelenic, who they clearly like to some degree. They're probably not in love with him anymore after a year of what he was able to do or not do this last season. But there is some playing time, and Kelenic has not hit lefties ever, basically, in his profile. So is there a world in which that's Bryan De La Cruz's role this season? It's just like, okay, we'll give you a 6-week tryout against lefties, essentially. It's a tiny sample size. Of course, you have spring training to evaluate him as well. But does that make sense? And I think that's the big thing that people were, I think, rightly pointing out was like, hey, this Ronald thing is going to loom a little bit. And it's on the back burner because people are not thinking about that, thinking about left field and shortstop and starting pitching, and with good reason. But your best player is going to come back, but we just don't know exactly when, and neither do they. And that leaves a little bit of uncertainty overall.
Yeah, Ronald Acuña's knee really does kind of complicate this a bit for the front office because we know that Kelenic is under control, and Kelenic showed last year that he can play center field. Now, he's not going to win a Gold Glove out there, but the fact he can play all three positions defensively is valuable. Here's the issue. You're not going to be able to add a good platoon partner with Kelenic because once Acuña comes back, he's going to play every day, assuming he's healthy. And I think the Braves just have to operate that at some point Acuña is going to be healthy every day. And I mean, hell, if he's not healthy, this team has problems. Like, full stop.
Right.
Next year's ceiling is Ronald Acuña Jr. and Spencer Strider coming back healthy. It can still be a good team. Don't get me wrong. I mean, if they don't get a ton out of either of those guys, they can still be good.
It's a good team now. But yeah, you're right. The ceiling part of that is the operative word for sure.
The 100-win mega team falls on Acuña being close to his MVP level, Strider being close to what he was before. And we frankly just won't know that until Memorial Day, quite honestly. But because you need Kelenic and presumably De La Cruz or a similar type of player, and similar is the key word there, you basically have to offer a position and try to entice a free agent who presumably will never play after mid to late May. Because if they add a corner outfielder, which we all think they will, a startable corner outfielder, he's going to be in left field. Michael Harris is going to be in center field every night. And at some point, Acuña is going to be in right field every night. Well, you'd only play 3 of them.
Yeah.
And Kelenic is your 4th because he can cover center field if Michael Harris gets beat up or Acuña needs a couple days or whatever the situation is. And then you're talking about a 5th outfielder on the roster. And I hate to say it, but most big leaguers worth a damn are not going to sign a contract to be a 5th outfielder or go play in Gwinnett and basically never see live pitching. So that does complicate this quite a bit.
No, it's a good point. And I can already hear, and this is not unreasonable. I mean, I don't think this way, but people are going to be skeptical that they're going to sign or acquire a starting left fielder until they do it. Right. So the assumption there that we're making is one that has not happened yet. And that's notable. So just to get out in front of that, we're not saying it's 100% because like maybe it won't happen. Maybe they'll go into the season with Kelenic and whatever else in that corner spot. But it is, to your point, there are logistics and players have choices. If the Braves decided and pivoted to the fact that, hey, you know what, we can't find our guy right now, we're going to turn left field into our platoon spot this year. We're going to be in the market for a really good lefty masher. Number one, that's not De La Cruz. Number two, that's not sexy. We don't love that. That's plausible to me. It's always, look, we discussed many times, and Sean Steven has as well. It's always been plausible that they would go into the season with a Kelenic platoon in left field. That's even including Ronnie. Like, we don't like that idea very much, but it's plausible that it would happen. But you're right. Trying to get someone to sign that contract, presumably for a modest rate, to be a part-time split player in December is not very easy to do. So if a guy comes around that you like for quite literally free, as far as baseball finances are concerned, you add the player, and if he doesn't do anything, he doesn't do anything. This will not stop them from doing anything. That's a crucial point that I think people understand probably, but just to put it sign Bryan De La Cruz on December 15th stops them from doing nothing. Nothing. So that's where I would be. Maybe they end up with a platoon again of Kelenic and Ramon Laureano, old pal, just to throw a name out there. That wouldn't excite anybody. I get that, but I don't think it's going to be a plan go into March and April with, hey, our left field solution is Kelenic and Bryan De La Cruz. Like, if they do the Kelenic thing, and that's a pivot, I think they will bring in someone else that is a more established, probably better against left-handed pitching in history kind of player, whether it's Laureano or whoever else it would be. So that's long-winded. I understand that. And we're talking a lot about Bryan De La Cruz. It's kind of funny that we're doing that, but it's just a good indication of, like, just to kind of settle. I'm not big on like programming the show from Twitter and social media reactions. I'm just trying to address things that I saw today that I was like, okay. And some of it was nuanced. So, like, the people that are smart talking about this stuff, like, hey, but if they do the platoon thing, it's not going to be De La Cruz. I don't think so. That's my best guess.
I'm curious to know.
I mean, permanently, like not.
Yeah.
Just to be clear, the Acuña first 6 weeks thing that I can see happening. I mean a permanent. We don't get another outfielder situation in left field, which is still plausible, even if we don't like it. But you and I agree. There is a chance that for 6 weeks or 8 weeks, De La Cruz is in a part-time role in their outfield. That is plausible to me if he looks good in spring. If he doesn't look good in spring, then you cut bait and that's it.
Sure. Yeah, the only way I could see like a full-time everyday role for a Kelenic and pick a platoon guy is if they would really go big at shortstop. And Hassan Kim is not big enough for me. I mean, they would have to go out and do like Carlos Correa has very loosely been like, if they want to trade,
you could do Kim. You could do Kim and like a starting pitching smash. You know what I mean? Like that. Maybe that would be like somewhat excusable. But we agree. Again, no one on this podcast right now is excited or endorsing a permanent platoon in left field. I think we all want it to be better than that. Yeah. I just don't want to rule it out as a potential thing because we're in mid-December, man. Like, there's plenty of offseason to go. Like, people hate this when I say we're still relatively early in the offseason. It doesn't feel that way. We still relatively are. But until they sign someone, you have to leave the door cracked open for them to do what they have now, basically, on their team.
Yeah. I mean, I think the next 10 days. So, I mean, we're recording this deep on the 15th. So I guess the next 9 days before front offices close down around Christmas time, I think there's going to be a pretty good sized wave of both free agent and trade activity in the next week and a half. And then things quiet down, and then they will ramp up. Usually second week of January, things get going again. But I think we kind of set it off the jump. We'll say it one more time. This is not going to be the move for the outfield by any means. This was a depth piece. And it's not even just our opinion here. So the trio of beat writers, Justin, Mark, and DOB, I'm guessing all conversed with someone in the organization, because within a couple minutes, they all had very similar tweets about what Bryan De La Cruz's role is going to be. That tells me either they reached out or the team source reached out to them and said, hey guys, this is what we're thinking. Because the Braves, I mean, they understand the PR side of it. They're not immune or oblivious to social media and what's, being said and thought. They try to get ahead of things when they can. And I'm pretty confident that somebody in the organization was like, yeah, guys, we are not penciling in 150 starts of Bryan De La Cruz. We're not nuts. This is truly a depth piece that probably got blown out of proportion a little bit just because it has been so painfully quiet the last month and a half.
The beat guys all mentioned the options to go to the minors. They all talked about pairing with Kelenic. Like, you're right. It was very, not stenographer, but you know what I mean? Like, somebody said something to those guys, which happens. Like, I'm on that kind of level with Hawk stuff where, like, I get the spin from the team, and that's just what happens. Like, you get someone told, and a lot of times it's actually not even spin. It's just like, hey, this is actually what we're thinking. So there you go, share it with the masses. And no one of those guys was like banging the drum that this is some awesome signing. Like, they're not being unrealistic. I'm sure the team is not trying to say that either. In fact, they're probably trying to lower expectations, if I had to guess, for this signing. So before we get out of here on what is probably going to be a shortened episode, relatively speaking by our standards, we got a question from Jared with a Y. Thanks for the question, Jared. Also, people can always ask us questions on social media if they want to. We'll sometimes get them in the show or in the YouTube comments, etc. Jared asks, where would the Braves rank in left field if they only rolled with Kelenic and De La Cruz? And as a bonus question, this is also from Jared, where would they rank it overall outfield, assuming Ronald is back fairly soon? That's his question. I will add, that assumes Michael Harris, of course, every day in center field, et cetera, et cetera. I have some numbers, Scott, that I will present to you, and you can react to them. This should not be a surprise to anyone, but Fangraphs has their depth chart projections up right now. There's some sort of mix between Steamer and Zips or whatever. It's just one number. Like, it's not gospel, but it is what it is. They have the Braves 29th out of 30 teams in left field.
Oof.
And that is a combination of Jared Kelenic and Bryan De La Cruz. I made sure they updated that. It does include De La Cruz, who, look, given his numbers recently, is not going to project well in a system like that. You know what I mean? He's seen as a below replacement level player. And Kelenic has not ever lit the world on fire either. So that combination is pretty dismal in a projection system, which makes sense. They are quite good, the Braves are, in center and right. I think Harris is in the top 3 in center field, which is actually super high, but I love Michael Harris. I know you do too. And like, I think he's still super underrated by most people. Like, he's an awesome player. And then Ronald, they do reduce his plate appearances, which makes sense. But he's still a top 5 right fielder by their projections. So the Braves are essentially top 5 in center, top 5 in right, and worst in the league, essentially, in left. So what does that mean to you? Does it make sense to you, Scott? And then, like, I referenced it earlier once, but I want to say this one more time. Like, the Braves are really good on paper right now. Like, we're not satisfied with their team, but I think people have kind of they're not seeing the forest through the tree. Whatever that's that old adage is. Like, this is still a very good baseball team, and this outfield thing kind of reminded me of that. Like, they have this glaring weak spot in my mind, and I think your mind too, in left field. But even if you go just 2 more spots over to the outfield, there's still like a very good outfield, even with a terrible spot in left, because they were so good in center and right.
Yeah, I think this team has the makings of having one of the best outfields in the game. I mean, maybe top 3, depending on what they do in left field full time and Acuña's health in right. But to answer the question, I mean, look, man, at the end of the day, Jared Kelenic, I know he was once a top draft pick and all the hype, and he's been traded and big deals and all that. But at the end of the day, here's Jared Kelenic. He has more than 1,400 plate appearances at the major league level. He has an 86 WRC plus, Brad. 86 in 1,400 plate appearances
It's not
with
good.
with a 30.5% strikeout rate, which is also not good. And he's been with 3 organizations. And I'm not saying that Kelenic is a finished product. I do think the Braves can get more out of him than what he gave them this year. But the fact is, man, I mean, you have to call it what it is. And I think Steven said it on the show a while back that generally players do not just suddenly get a lot better after 1,400 plate appearances over 4 years. It's not impossible, but it's pretty rare for players to break out in year 5 of their careers.
Yeah.
I am curious to see what changes, if any, the Braves make with Kelenic this upcoming season. But, I mean, if you told me that circumstances happen and it is Kelenic and De La Cruz for 162, I mean, 29th feels right to me. There's probably someone worse because there's always someone worse, but that would be about as uninspiring as it gets. And I think if you're the Braves, you have to, 1, add a good outfielder for the 19th time this episode, add a good outfielder, and then just cross your fingers and hope that over a month or month and a half, that Kelenic and De La Cruz, or if they bring in another right-handed outfielder between now and spring training, which they could, that pair will give you enough where you're not just like banging your head against the wall every night until Acuña comes back, and God, let's pray that knee is healthy and ready to go.
Yeah, and with Kelenic, like he's projected by Fangraphs and by other things I've seen, like as like a 1-win player, which is not very good as a primary, like not full-time starter, but like the strong side of the platoon. Like you're out there more often than you're not. In this projection, it's 427 plate appearances, so that's not a very good player. It's not a terrible player. Kelenic is not without use. Like he has use, and I think if he's your 4th outfielder, that's not a bad spot to be in.
Yep.
And I still believe, while Steven's point, I 100% agree with. You cannot bank on him breaking out. There is a little upside with Jared Kelenic. I do believe that still. He's a talented guy. Pedigree is there. I'm not banking on it, though, and the Braves shouldn't either. I don't think. So it is what it is on that front. I'm not surprised that they're that low in left field. Like, they're also, I don't know if they're that low. I'm looking in real time to see where they are on shortstop right now. They're, 27th at shortstop. So better, although the bar is higher at shortstop. Like Orlando Arcia, as much as we picked on him for a while, is better than what the Braves had projected in left field, honestly. Because the glove, I mean, it's the glove. It's the glove at shortstop. I mean, honestly, that's as simple as it is. Like Arcia has been better than what the Braves are projected to get from left field. Let's just say that at least. He doesn't mean he's guaranteed to be that good or that mediocre. But anyway. That answers the question. By the way, the people I think will be surprised by this. And Fangraphs does separate. There's actually a free agent team on their depth charts that leads like every projection because it's every free agent rolled into one. But okay, Scott, I think you probably already saw the doc, so I can't guess. I can't have you guess. But what did it have surprised you before I wrote this down? That the Braves are 4th in all of baseball in position player WAR projection for next season.
No,
that includes Ronnie missing a month plus. That includes Kelenic and De La Cruz in left field. That includes Orlando Arcia at shortstop, and no one behind Sean Murphy essentially at catcher. And they're still 4th in all of baseball. So another reminder, like this is still a good team. I'm whispering, but like it's still pretty good even at. And again, we're not saying to keep it this way. They should still upgrade the team, but they're pretty good as it is.
Yes, it is a very, very good core. They need to add to the core, and we all think they will. And again, if we're having this same podcast in 2 months, then absolutely, man, we'll be banging the table and going, what are they doing? This is ridiculous. It's a World Series contender. Spend the money, spend the prospects, whatever. I don't think we're going to get to that point, and I hope we don't get to that point of a podcast. But yes, I think we almost become spoiled by the fact that this team's core is like the envy of 80% of the rest of the league. It's good. A lot of the talent is in their prime, that like kind of 25 to 32-year-old sweet spot for players. A lot of these guys are locked up and they've been around for a long time. So there's not going to be a ton of newness with the Atlanta Braves year over year during this, I guess, era of long-term deals for Olsen and Riley and Harris and Acuña and Murphy and Strider, and right, like there's just not that much turnover, at least on the offensive side. Pitching staffs are going to churn over more because of injuries and just year-over-year variance. But offensively, man, this is not a team that's going to run out 5 new regulars anytime soon. I mean, we're talking 5+ years from now when this team is going to have significant overhaul with the lineup. And maybe that doesn't make for the most fun off seasons in the world. But I tell you, man, there are teams that dream of having the core of offensive players the Braves have in this lineup right now. And I mean, most of them are also signed below market, which is also another dream of teams. And again, man, does it make for fireworks? The off seasons the last couple of years have been okay. I mean, they haven't done nothing, but they also have not been like the Mets have so much turnover and so much money changing right now. Like they're going to have a busier offseason than the Braves because they do not have the same core that Atlanta does at the same dollar and contracts Atlanta does.
Yeah, one more stat, and then we'll log off here. But I mentioned the Braves were 4th in that projection on the position player side. Overall, Scott, they are 2nd in baseball, behind only the reigning champion Dodgers, who then got better in the offseason. So the Dodgers are kind of monstrous with their roster right now. They also added Michael Conforto, which in Steven's mind means like a 7-win jump, I think. And by the way, you and I did forget Michael Conforto on our last show as far as the contracts that we could have considered signing. We never mentioned his name. I would have liked that deal. I want to speak for you. It would have been fine for me. Steven would have thrown a party if they signed that contract. I would have been fine with it. Just to say that out loud. We just didn't mention his name. So we saw your comments, everybody. We saw. I get it.
Yeah. No. That was a fun exercise. We got a lot of response on what deal would you have done for the Braves, but yeah, just again, I said it a couple nights ago. Patience. It is very, very difficult to do. I find myself getting annoyed when I scroll Twitter and, or like I'll be away from my phone for 4 hours. I'm like, oh man, let me open up the apps.
We're doing it too. We're doing it too. But I mean, as much as I'm famous and dead inside, we're all doing it. Our Hammer Territory DM chat is essentially just complaining about the Braves not doing anything. That's what we're doing right now. Everybody's doing the same thing. I understand it wholly. I do try to, though, take a half step back and be like, all right, this is a good team. It's still early in the offseason. It doesn't feel that way, but it is. Like the clock is not moving as fast as we want it to move. But it's not even Christmas yet. Like last year, man, I don't want to go back to last year, but do you remember free agency just didn't even start until January, basically, across baseball last year? Things are going faster this year, which is making the Braves seem slower, if that makes sense. But they got some time to do something. And Bryan De La Cruz, man, inspiring an entire podcast in mid-December. Shout out to you, my friend. Happy birthday to Bryan De La Cruz.
There we go. Yeah. I'm sure a longtime listener of the show, Brian.
Oh, he'll be dialed in to this show, nothing else. Yeah. Hey, oh man, I got a podcast. Like, oh, they're being mean to me. I'm not being mean either. I think there's actually a tiny bit of intrigue with Bryan De La Cruz, but hey.
Yeah. If the Braves want to turn him into a really good hitter, yeah, baby, let's do it for $500,000. That would be a dream. Yeah. I don't think anyone's holding their breath, but hey, the Braves are good at developing hitters. The Marlins are not. Maybe there's something. I mean, clearly the front office sees something in De La Cruz that they like.
That's all it is. They see something somewhere. It's probably the batted ball profile from a couple years ago. Honestly, It could be as simple as that. Like at one point, this individual was rocketing baseballs. He has so there is this is kind of a sidebar, but there is a baseline of professional hitters where, like, if you are capable, even on a one-off or a 5 times, hitting the ball as hard as he has hit the ball in the major leagues, you have some sort of talent that is not easily replicable. That doesn't mean you're going to be good, but it means like there's probably only 100 people in the world who can hit the ball as hard as Bryan De La Cruz did in 2022. Like, and that's not everything. Just to be very clear, you can hit the ball hard and still be bad at baseball. Like that's actually possible. But there's a little bit of something, and
it is the equivalent of a relief pitcher who throws 98 miles an hour.
That is it. Yep.
And you might leave a 98 mile an hour fastball right down the middle, and Austin Riley hits it 20 rows deep, or you might not have a curveball or a slider or a changeup to work off that 98 mile an hour fastball. But you can bet that some team is going to give you a chance because they think, okay, maybe we can fix the guy. And guess what? If De La Cruz comes to spring training and he goes 0 for 45, then you cut him too, or you send him to Gwinnett. And there's always the Adam Duvall types in the spring too. And hopefully they're
baby. Now you're speaking my language, Scott.
Hopefully a little better than what Adam gave the team. I'm sorry, Adam. I hope you enjoy retirement.
I think it's over for Adam. It's okay.
Yeah.
Heck
of a career.
Well, it was. I long defended Adam Duvall, and then last year it was too bad to defend. And there you go. Yeah. Okay, Scott, we've done enough on this Sunday evening late. I appreciate your patience as I'm traversing the globe this week. What's going on in your world? Where can folks that might be new to the podcast find all of what you maybe write, share on social media, etc. about the Braves?
Well, first, Brad, I want to wish you a great time in Vegas. I know you're on day 3 in Vegas,
this is day 3.
Oh yeah, Vegas.
Day 3 of 6 because and by the way, no one cares about this, but I'm here to cover the NBA Cup, which the Hawks lost it on Saturday. But I was coming anyway. Valiant effort by the Hawks. The Atlanta Falcons, my nemesis, play in Las Vegas on Monday. I'm going to the game as a fan. I am prepared for the worst. Could be a disaster. We'll see. And then I have to work Tuesday here for the NBA Cup final. Then I fly home. The fun never stops, Scott. But you haven't lived until you have to come to. And I have to come to Vegas regularly for work. I mean, it's a bizarre thing. Summer League's here every year. Like I'm like a partial resident of Las Vegas. It is definitely the place that I come more often than any other place other than Atlanta. Which is weird as that is. It's just the reality. So
Vegas is the ultimate 48-hour city if you can help it. 6 days in Vegas, you start to, I think, lose sense of all time and I don't know, but no. Well, I'm glad you're doing okay so far. You're halfway home,
hanging in.
Again, a live podcast from your hotel room, and
we did it.
If folks want to hear my ramblings, I am at Scott Coleman at 55 on socials. I do a little bit of writing over at batterypower.com, which of course is where our old show used to be. And if you are interested in the Atlanta Braves, the team of writers at Battery Power, I mean, for my money, cover the team better than anyone. And really great content year round, 365. So shout out to those guys and gals on the writing team. And we've said it for like every show for 3 weeks now. Hopefully we have a transaction, a trade or a signing, maybe bigger than Bryan De La Cruz to talk about on one of these shows soon. And as Brad always says, if you subscribe to the show or follow us or whatever it might be, you will have that in your feed the moment it comes out. And let's hope for a busy couple weeks ahead.
Well done, Scott. In the plug department, I have nothing else to add. Subscribe, rate, review, folks. We appreciate you listening. We'll have more this week. I don't know when the show will come. If there's a move, we will have a podcast in rapid succession as we try to do. But even if there isn't a move, we'll have something later on this week. So stay tuned, subscribe to the podcast, and we'll see you all next time.